And we go back there.
Still go to nursing home, assisted living places and stuff.
Maybe I made it too far. There's my flashlight.
Do you want flashlight?
No, I was looking for this. I don't know where it's at. Sometimes for me, you see this black bar on the bottom of the screen frame? I normally like to zoom in and use it as my leveling if it looks even all the way across and it's probably level. So, we're good to go.
Okay. Can I finish recording?
Heath, and the card. Don't forget that. We need that, and I'll show you where to put it. Get it?
Well, how's the life of a young senior female student these days, girlfriend?
When did you graduate?
Huh?
When did you graduate?
Yeah. Spend all your time when you're young.
Well, I have a standard credit class, so if I pass it, I get credit. And I didn't pass my one that I had this semester, so I need to pass this one. And I don't want to take big classes.
What is Good morning, Miss Tiffany. Everybody in the choir, come on up. We'll get started here. Number 43. 4-3. Respect gospel songs. Tell them Jesus alone. Are you weary? Are you heavy-hearted? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Are you grieving over who's departed? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You have no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Are you troubled at the thought of dying? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. For Christ coming, in the heart is sighing. Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You have no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Ah, good singing. Let's look over now to number 89. Number 89, sitting at the feet of Jesus. We'll do the first and fourth verse. Sitting at the feet of Jesus, watching, waiting every day, trusting in His grace and power, safe to keep me all the way. Sitting at the feet of Jesus, where I love to kneel and pray, till His goodness and His glory drive the shadows from my way. When the toils of life are over, when my race on earth is run, may the evening shadows gathering find me there when day is done. Sitting at the feet of Jesus, where I love to kneel and pray, till His goodness and His glory drive the shadows from my way.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to North Carthage Baptist Church. Brother Chuck, your announcements.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody. Today is the fifth Sunday. Brother Bill reminded me as soon as I walked up, but it is the fifth Sunday. We don't have a fifth Sunday preacher this time because of holidays. Okay, Bible study Wednesday night at 6:30. We will be resuming that, and remember our soldier basket in the back. And I have one card here. It says, "To all my friends at North Carthage, another year has gone by. Your children are growing up. You are growing older. I had most of you in Sunday school class for several years. I saw a lot of you get saved. I miss that. There are no services like that where I am. I think about going to church with Kathy singing in the choir, and it gives me an empty feeling inside. It will never be the same. The songs are not the same. The preaching is not the same. The service is not the same. The spirit is not the same. And so I try most Sundays to catch North Carthage's service, and sometimes I do. Those are the good times. I have my songbook and I sing along with you. I am now working full time, so on Sundays I'm not able to drive across the mountain. It seems further and further every time I come, and now I am coming only to say goodbye to friends I have loved for so long. Joe Beasley, Robbie, Paul, and lastly Philip. I got to come when you had Brother Gentry's farewell service. We were there with Brother Gentry many of those years that he served. If we had to leave for Bill to go to another church, Brother Gentry always welcomed us back, and when it was time for us to come back, you all welcomed us back. I miss you all, and I love you all. This is my Christmas card to my friends at North Carthage. Know that I love you, and maybe we will see you again someday. Miss Barbara McDonald." And she sent a card, "Silent Night, Holy Night, wishing you the blessings of peace, love, and joy this Christmas. Love, Barbara." Our birthday announcements this week: Miss Donna Wilson, Matt Watts, and Miss Puddin have a birthday this week, and Jimmy and Lois Hamlet have an anniversary. Are there any other birthdays or anniversaries? Have two deaths in connection with the church. Miss Debbie Fulton and Mr. Wayne Hensley both passed away, and their services were last week. On the prayer request list, Miss Mary Ruth Bowe, Miss Ruth Green, Miss Oline Harwell, Mr. Wayne Kemp, Mr. Don Langford, Patsy Enoch and his wife, Brother Ricky Rankin. I talked to Spud Wednesday, and he said Brother Ricky is doing well as long as he'll learn how to eat again, and he said hopefully that's not a problem because he's never had a problem with it. Miss Lois Hamlet, Alan Carver, Aline Shoulders, Christine Woodard, Rita Stevens, Nathan Crow, Dennis and Tyler Costin, Bruce Angel, Jacob Brown, Bobby Sanders, Larry Bogle, Chad Smith, Jim Wilburn, Roger Shoulders, Brother Gentry, and Miss June Angel. Are there any others that we need to put on the prayer request list? I don't think I did. Miss Juanita England, let's remember her.
Brother Chuck just sent us little one's been sick this week. I think they're going to try to be here, but he's been sick, so remember him.
What is his name?
Zealand.
Let's remember Zealand and Jacinta and their family.
And then I think Bryce and Crystal's little one has been sick as well.
Let's remember Bryce.
Thank you for the prayers for Jim Wilburn that I heard a week ago yesterday. He is improving, and Jimmy and Kathy are still down there taking care of children and taking care of business. So we're thankful that he wasn't hurt any worse than he was, but it's going to be a 6 to 8 week recovery and all. I mean, if he recovers, it won't be fully, in other words, at that time.
All right, let's remember Brother Jim as well. Anybody else?
Brother Chuck and Rita McCall. She has pneumonia and the flu, and she's recovering, but she's late 80s, so the family requested everybody to be mindful.
Let's remember Miss Rita McCall. I think Daddy had a bad day yesterday. He keeps wanting to get out and come to church, and Mama won't let him because she knows he won't shake hands with everybody, afraid that he'll get sick and stuff. And I called last night, and he said he was planning on coming. And when she got on the phone, she said he's planning on not coming. So let's remember him because he can't do the things that he wants to do for sure. Anybody else?
Chuck, also, I think a friend of mine called me Bobby Albert. He was back in the hospital up here yesterday, and I think he's got pneumonia. They're not looking for him to get back.
Let's remember Brother Bobby Albert. Anybody else this morning? All right, I'll turn it back over to Miss Smith.
Brother Roger showed us, lead us in a prayer.
Handling all right, first department, they're all, thank you for this. Yes, that you remember all the requests we made to see, the lost loved ones who asked to be with their family. In dear Lord, the ones that are traveling today, we ask you to be with them. But most of all, dear Lord, thank you for the salvation of their soul. Forgive us all of these sins. We ask you to be with Brother Anthony and Brother God, our lead Sunday school teachers today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
My verse today is from 1 John 4:15. Whoever shall confess that Jesus is the Son of God, God dwelleth in him, and he in God. We'll have a verse of the song and pass to our classes.
Let us all stand, turn to number 107. 107. Someday, to the first verse.
That's right.
My trials here on earth will cease someday, and I will have an ending peace someday, some happy day from sin set free. I'll live with Christ forever, someday, someday.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the North Carthage Baptist Church Adult Sunday School class on today, December the 30th. I'd like to welcome everybody that's watching via the internet. I'd like to tell the ones that are on the prayer request list, we hope you get better, and the ones that are just shut in and watching, we miss you, and hopefully you can come back. Our title of our lesson this morning is Home. And the picture is a mat that says Home Sweet Home. And, I got to thinking about it, and what is home? I'm sure if I asked you, a lot of us would say different places. Some might say this church is home. That's when we were reading Sister Barbara's letter, home. Some of us might think that it's, our child birthplace. We'd go back home and, like for me, go back home to mom and daddy's, and but home is a place that, there's been a lot of stories about. There's been a lot of songs written about. Some of us might even say, I know, talking to Daddy sometimes, that home is heaven. He can't wait to go home. And so it just depends on who you are and what you're talking about. But our lesson this morning is about home. It says, nothing stirs the heart like a longing for home, especially for those who have been away for an extended time. For most, home holds fond memories of love, acceptance, faith, and laughter. It is also the place we turn when we need rest and direction. There really is no place like home. And, again, as we're talking about this, home may mean a lot of places, different places, but we all get the general context of home. After having the Christmas lesson last week, we're back in Genesis chapter 31, verses 2 through 16 this week, and it says, home, God is with his people giving direction for living. Giving direction for living. And when I was thinking about this and thinking about home and the time of year that it is, and I thought this year, how many people will make a New Year's resolution? And almost everybody, I'd say, it's one of those trendy things that are, for most people, made to be broken. And yesterday I sat down and I read a book. I don't read a lot unless it's sports related or dealing with work. It's just one of those things. I can do math problems a lot easier than I can sit down and read a book. It's just one of those things. But yesterday I read a book called The Power of the Positive Dog. And I'm going to try to change my mindset about the way I look at things, about smiling more, laughing more, being more thankful, being more gratitude and everything. And as I was reading this and studying it yesterday, when I figured out that it was going to be the 5th Sunday, and I figured out that it had been too late for me to call Brother Sheely or Brother Bill or Brother Jamie or somebody else, I thought, well, we all sat there last Sunday and probably all of us knew it was the 5th Sunday, and none of us said anything about it. So that's why Bill caught me before I stepped on the porch this morning about, are you ready to teach? I've been looking at the phone to call you, but I was reading this and thinking about Jacob and the way that he changed, the way that his outlook changed, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit, about how he dealt with his father-in-law, what he would have done, and then what he done this week, or in this week's lesson. So we'll get started this morning, and hopefully we'll get a little bit out of it. Explore the text, obedience required, Genesis 31, 2 through 3. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto thee the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. It says, if the phrase, if looks could kill, were ever true, Laban must have given Jacob that look. Laban's displeasure with Jacob was written on his face. Laban had retained Jacob's services on terms determined exclusively by Jacob. Under the terms of the contract, Jacob's revenue would soon outstrip Laban's own profits. Consequently, Laban's sons feared of losing their inheritance. They began to complain that Jacob was draining assets from their father's estate. Jacob realized he no longer was welcome in thy father-in-law's house. Laban now looked at him with the resentment and regret. So you think about that. I think we all can understand what it means if looks could kill. And the way that Laban was looking at Jacob based on the fact that when Jacob was married to the 2 daughters, he didn't have any sons, and now he had 2 sons, and those 2 sons were looking, talking about the jealousy that they had towards Laban and towards Jacob, and Laban was looking at his agreement with Jacob with resentment and regret. And I've said this many times. I didn't mind when I was younger. I ain't gonna say I didn't mind it, but I had much rather Mama whip me, which she did a lot of times with different things. Belts, hairbrushes, fly swats, both ends. Her favorite thing was a wiffle ball bat, one of those plastic bats, and I got whipped a lot of times by Mama, and only really got whipped by Daddy once. But I had rather be whipped by Mama 50 times as Daddy look at me and just go and shake that head. And I'm sure that Jacob could feel that he was trying to please Laban. He had taken his daughters. He had made that commitment for the 7 years for each of them, and he was working. And all of a sudden, the countenance changed, and that working relationship changed, and the way he looked at him changed. And so you know that had to been uncomfortable, and it had to been difficult, especially when Jacob was taking and doing what he said he was going to do. It says, by noticing his in-laws were jealous of him, God began pricking Jacob's heart. Although circumstances by themselves haven't always aren't always good indicators of God's will. The Lord often uses difficult circumstances, making his children uncomfortable so they will follow him. God reminded Jacob of his previous promise. Although Jacob wanted to return home earlier after working 14 years for Rachel's hand in marriage, the timing wasn't right. 6 years later, with his family and wealth firmly established, God would make good on his promise. And remember, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, the promise that God had made to Jacob in the dream and everything that was going to come about. But Jacob, he had promised to work for 14 years. Those 14 years were up, and he didn't return home yet. And it says 6 years here. So 20 years later, God is still keeping good on his promise, and he is nudging Jacob by his presence and his spirit to return home. Now my question is, it says sometimes God makes circumstances on his children uncomfortable so we will do the things that we're supposed to do. Anybody ever been through that? You know, sometimes the spirit hits and we'll follow and just go right on. But sometimes it hits and the earthly flesh gets a little stubborn and we think we know what we're supposed to do and we want to do it our way. And sometimes God puts us things in our past, obstacles in our past to make sure that we do it his way. And one way or the other, his will is going to be done. It just depends on how stubborn we are and how willing we are, and depending on the person and the situation, it may get, you know. I've heard several people that talked about their calling to preach, and they ran from it, and things happened. And then I've heard of others that, you know, just, and it's different in all of us. And I'm sure we could talk to these two right here and they could tell us their story. But when God's presence comes, he wants us to follow. It says, following God's command to return to the land of the fathers and to thy kindred wasn't as simple as it might sound. Jacob left many broken bridges when he left home. His brother was so mad that he threatened to kill him. His father was so distressed over Jacob's dishonesty that he trembled uncontrollably. How would his family receive him? Would his brother make good on his threat? Would his father accept him as a son? With so many unknowns, staying put would have been an easy choice. Whenever God calls, staying put may seem like the safe choice, but answering his call is always the right decision. And you think about it, even after 20 years, if you knew that somebody was wanting to kill you, it wouldn't be an easy choice to go back home. Also, it's never easy to go face up to the things that you did. You know, one of my worst things that I remember is coming in late. Of course, I was almost 21, and when I was still living at home, when I told them I was going to be home, I had a 12 o'clock curfew, and they were always late. If it was 12:05, I had to answer for those 5 minutes. When I was younger, it was 11 o'clock, and I remember some of the conversations that I had about, well, how come they get to stay out to 12 and I get to stay out at 11? And, well, I'm your daddy, and I'm going to tell you when you're going to come home. I don't care what they're doing. And I appreciate that now. At the time, I resented it a little bit, but we always have to answer to whatever we've done. And Jacob had mistreated his family and deceived his family. His brother wanted to kill him, and his father was deeply, deeply disappointed in him, and he had to go back and face that. Jacob had God's promise, I will be with thee. His promise is one God makes to all of his covenant people. He emphasizes it in Jesus by the name Emmanuel. God is with us. God is present in every believer through the permanent indwelling of the Holy Spirit. Believers can be thankful for God's presence and promises when facing difficulties. Think about it. If God leads you to do something, he's going to be with you. And he's not promising that it's going to be easy, but he's promising that he's always going to be with you. And you think about it. To do one of God's tasks, who else would you want to go with you rather than the Holy Spirit? Think about it. Think about it. One of these two could get called to go preach at the White House, and I could promise them I'd go with them, but I'm not going to be much help. But the knowing that the Holy Spirit's going to go with them is the best feeling that you can have. And you know, we think about that, and it says believers can be thankful for God's presence and promises when facing difficulties. And he promised that he will always be with us. God is with us in the name of Emmanuel. Obedience declared, Genesis chapter 31, verses 4 through 13. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock. And he said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. But the God of my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. If he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ring straight shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring straight. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring straight, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see, all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring straight, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, go thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. In verses 4 and 5, it says, After noticing Laban's attitude and hearing from God, Jacob met with his family far away from Laban's interference. In the privacy of an open field, Jacob's plans could be confidently shared with Rachel and Leah. So, in order to talk to his wives, the daughters of Laban, he took his wives far, far away and got in the middle of an open field, making sure nobody was listening, nobody was eavesdropping, and he began to talk to them. It says, Jacob pointed out the difference between his father-in-law Laban and the God of my father. The father of his wives had rejected him, while God his father had accepted him. Laban made the mistake of basing the relationship on emotion and performance. God, the wife's father, loves and cares for his own unconditionally. And you think about that. I tell my daughter all the time, whether it's cheerleading, whether it's school, whether it's we have tried everything, basketball, soccer, softball, everything, and she keeps going back to cheerleading. And I've always told her, you know, your worth is not on what you're doing. I'm always gonna love you. It's not on whether you play good or not play good. And of course, y'all know I'm a sports guy, so I have pushed that way. You know, it's just the way it is. But Laban, had treated Jacob based on what he had done out of emotion and performance. However, God had loved him unconditionally, and he is pointing that out to his wives. It says Jacob explained his predicament by providing proof of Laban's trickery. Although he tried pleasing Laban with hard work, Laban repeatedly deceived him. 10 is a number of completion, indicating that Laban cheated him at every turn. His father-in-law was not interested in the well-being of Jacob's family. He cared more about his personal well-being than the well-being of Jacob. In spite of Laban's underhanded dealings, Jacob turned the table on him, keeping Jacob from being defrauded. Noting the change in Jacob's response to unfavorable circumstances, earlier in his life he took matters in his own hands, but now he honestly evaluated the situation, made his family aware of the situation, showing tremendous spiritual growth. And so here it is, at 10 times during this 14 or 20 years, Laban has changed Jacob's wages. At every turn, he's changed. And Jacob has just basically rolled with the punches. And then he is telling his wives the way that it has been. And it shows a tremendous amount of growth in Jacob, because earlier, he would have probably confronted, he would have probably did something to make sure that he wasn't being cheated. But in this time, he had just he evaluated the situation, told his wives about the situation, and went on. In verses 10 through 13, the laws of heredity were unknown to humanity until the Australian botanist Gregor Mendel conducted the experiments in the latter part of the 19th century. But God knew the laws of heredity from the beginning. He gave Jacob directions to enable him to take advantage of those laws in breeding his flock. Jacob acknowledged that his prosperity was not the result of the understanding of animal husbandry. God had blessed him. God is the giver of life's blessings, and all believers would do well by giving God the glory like Jacob. So Jacob made a deal with Laban at the time about the flock, about the period. There was usually at this time, the sheep were white and the goat were black. And he made a deal with him that he would keep the ones that were not strictly white or strictly black. And with that, it says that, and I had to look this up, ring straight, speckled, and grizzled. First of all, I knew what speckled was. I could get that. That had spots on it. Ring straight means they were striped with the different colored rings, and grizzled means they were having or streaked with gray hair. So when those were born out of the flock, Jacob got to keep those. And when this started happening, it started happening over and over and over and over, and Jacob's flock became big, and Laban's flock became small. And so Jacob was being blessed, and it wasn't anything that Jacob was doing, it was God's divine hand on it. And Jacob knew that it was from God's blessings through the dream, and that God was showing him which way to go and which way to say. The phrase, the angel of God, refers to God himself. Like he had done before, God divinely let Jacob know that he would bless him regarding of what deceitful actions Laban took. Notice Jacob's response. He immediately answered when God called, "Here am I." The presence and power of God falls on believers when they declare their complete obedience to him. They cannot expect God to bless partial or conditional obedience, as King Saul learned when he kept the spoils of the war sacrifice. And you think about it. He had a dream, and he answered the call with, immediately it says, "Here am I." When God calls on us, how do we answer? I'll put it in football terms. Do we run a 4.240 as fast as we can get away? Do we hesitate? Do we stop and ponder on it a minute? Or do we do it like Jacob did and immediately say, "Here am I"? And it says obedience. That's what God wants. Not partial obedience, not conditional obedience, not a dealing, "Hey, I'll make a deal with you." He wants obedience to what he calls us to do, to what action he wants us to do. Whatever that may be, whether that's to say a prayer, whether that's to testify, whether it's to sing, whether it's to preach, whether it's to go talk to somebody, whatever it is, he wants it on his terms, not our terms. And that's a lot of times, and I'll curl my fingers and toes up, a lot of times we want to do it our way, on our conditions, on our terms. Well, let's just wait a minute. There's too many people here today. There's something always gets in the way. But God wants obedience, just like Jacob said, "Here am I." It says, verse 12 speaks of God's omniscience. He is all-knowing. Nothing catches him by surprise. He is fully aware of all things, regardless of where his children might go or what may happen in their lives. God is fully aware of how they are treated. And the key doctrine up here says, God is the source of all blessings, temporal and spiritual, all that we have and all that we owe him, from Deuteronomy 8:17-16. And something as little as what color the sheep are going to be, what color the goats are going to be, what color the cattle are going to be. God is in control. And if he wants it that way, he'll make it that way. And, that's pretty powerful when you think about it. Where he's going to make the animals with spots on them, with rings on them, or with gray on them, to make his divine plan come out, just like he had promised to Jacob. It said, Jacob told his wives how God was directing him to return to the land of his kindred. He told them of how God reminded him of his vow to him made by anointing the pillar. No doubt Jacob worried how this wife would respond. He loved his family and wanted them with him. Would his wives follow him? Regardless of how others responded, when God unveils his plan, we must follow that plan faithfully. We must never let others determine our obedience to God. In the end, all believers will be judged based on their faithfulness to God. So here Jacob is, and he's got to tell his two wives about the first dream. They have witnessed the blessings that Jacob has received about the second dream and about the flock, but he's got to go back to them and tell them that I'm supposed to go home. Two women that have never left their home, he's got to go back and say, I've got to follow. Now, again, it's all about what's going on, but I'm sure you dreaded telling your wife that you'd been called to preach, wondering, well, she didn't sign up for this. I have listened to some of Mom and Daddy's conversations about being a preacher's wife, or actually I've had some conversations with my wife about being a deacon's wife. And, sometimes you get things put in your lap that you necessarily signed up for, but you didn't sign up for. There's circumstances that come about, and you have to do things, and it's just but it says, when God leads us, we must follow faithfully. And think about it. It says, don't let others determine your obedience to God. How often does that happen? How often does that happen? And in the end, the ones that have determined your obedience to God won't be beside you when you're being judged about your obedience to God. It's going to be you and God. And it's going to be you that has to answer to it. And when you think about it, that gets a little sticky and a little tricky, because here on earth, as we're trying to follow or not follow, or trying to find ways to get around or not get around what we're supposed to do, a lot of times we point to others and blame it on others. But in the end, it's going to be us and God. Obedience affirmed, Genesis 31:14 through 16. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he has sold us and hath quit devouring also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. It says Rachel and Leah were from the region of Haran and had not lived anywhere else. Jacob's announcement meant they would be uprooted from everything and everyone they knew in order to move to a foreign land about which they knew nothing, and to live with people they had never met. And as I know, as we're moving around and going, it's hard to uproot and move. It's hard to go to a new job where you don't know anybody. It's difficult to do those things, but sometimes you have to do it. And Rachel and Leah was at this point in their life. So they were taking Rachel and Leah, their handmaids, and all 12 children that they had up and going. So together Rachel and Leah made 4 conclusions. First, they had no portion or inheritance in their father's house. When Jacob arrived, Laban had only daughters, meaning the death of their father, the family inheritance would be split between them. Since then, Laban had several sons. The 2 sisters realized their father had excluded them from any inheritance. Although they had worked in the family business, their father had given his sons the family business. Their brothers were only concerned with preserving their wealth. Having no inheritance, the sisters were abandoned by their father. So they went from being the 2, and the 2 that were going to get everything, to the 2 that were cast out. They had been married off and basically sold off to Jacob, and their inheritance had changed. And as I'll get to in just a second, the way that their father looked at them had changed. I know my daughter, the oldest one, tells me all the time now that we have a younger one, that I don't treat her the same way as I do the other one. And I said, all the time, I said, listen, sister, you got 9 years by yourself. What about that spoiling of 9 years And I said, right now she's getting all your hand-me-downs. So but I understand where Rachel and Leah were coming from. The inheritance was theirs. Now Laban had all of these sons, and the inheritance was no longer theirs. It says, second, they were no longer part of the family. Evidently, Laban had given his daughters the same disdainful look that he gave Jacob. Their father treated them not like family, but like strangers. At their wedding, they may have first sensed how their father felt about them when he used them for leverage so he could receive 14 years of labor from Jacob instead of treating them like daughters. And you think about that, and after the marrying off, which the custom was they made the deal for 7 years. And but it says the look and the way they were treated. And there's the old saying, people won't remember what you say to them, but they will remember the way you treated them. And so they were being treated differently than they were before the marriage. It said the money refers to the bridal compensation customarily paid to the bride's family by the groom's father. In Jacob's case, he had labored for 14 years to obtain 2 sisters. But the 2 women here did not use the term for bridal compensation. Instead, they used the Hebrew term for silver, a term from a recognized standard of trade in the area. The sisters believed that in his marital negotiations, their father sold them as he would of any other commodity. Furthermore, they felt he had wasted the payment he received from Jacob and denied them its benefits. So here the 2 sisters are, and they feel like they have been sold off just like any other thing that they had for silver, and then they had got no benefit from it. So they had received no inheritance, they were being treated differently, and what they were sold for, they felt like they didn't get any benefit for them. In verse 16, it says, third, Rachel and Leah recognized God's divine plan. While their father had treated them poorly, God had overridden the father's selfishness by providing for them. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, lamenting the fact that their father didn't love or care for them, they acknowledged God's providential care, a sign they were trusting Jacob's God. And you think about that, and they got to witness the flock of Jacob grow substantially and the flock of Laban go down. And they got to see the different ways that Laban treated Jacob and the way that the brothers treated Jacob. And they got to see that firsthand. And they knew what Jacob had said about his dream. It says, fourth, they were committed to Jacob's God. Notice the significance of the last sentence of verse 16. Because Jacob's wives could have said, do whatever you think is best. Instead, they told Jacob, whatsoever God has said unto thee do. Rather than encourage Jacob to pursue his plans, they encouraged him to follow God's plans. Whatever the future held, Rachel and Leah were putting their lives and the lives of their children into the hands of God. Jacob's heart must have jumped for joy when his own loved ones endorsed wholeheartedly and without reservation his desire to do the will of God. From this point forward, life would never be the same for Jacob and his family. And you think about it. When we're making these decisions and making these choices to either follow what God puts on our heart or not, how much easier it is to follow when you have people supporting you than it is when you don't have people supporting you. Luckily, and knock on wood, every time that God has put something on my heart to do that was not necessarily out there, but changing and moving, I've had people that supported me. And Jacob is another example of his wives saw what was happening and they supported him. It says, so whatsoever God has said unto thee, do. So Jacob had the support of his wife. Rachel and Leah declared their allegiance to Jacob and his God, recognizing that God had used Jacob to provide them with a future. Realizing God was the source of their blessing, they took steps of faith. Believers can take steps of faith based upon God's past faithfulness. By trusting God and stepping out in faith, believers will grow as they witness God's faithfulness. And we talk about it all the time. It all comes back to faith in everything we do. The faith that God can't lie, and God sent his only son, and that he was born the way he said he was born, and that he died, and that he was resurrected, and that again, he'll come back someday. And that's what we base it all on, our faith. And by trusting God and having faith in which way he leads us, then we can know that he will be faithful to be with us. In context, it says, believers can be thankful for God's promises when facing jealousy and hostility. Knowing that he has their best intentions in mind, believers can honor God with his directions, and based on God's past faithfulness, believers can take steps of faith. Thank you guys for listening this morning. Hope you got something out of it, and hopefully when God shows up on the scene and the Holy Spirit shows up on the scene, we'll be just like Jacob and follow him like we're supposed to. Thank you guys for listening.
We heard somebody raving on the last night about the play. Actually, she was, she was the star of the play down here.
You did a good job.
Thank you so much.
Doing all right, man? Huh?
How you doing?
Oh. As long as I kick with one leg at a time, I'm all right. Three sisters. Mr. Conker. How are you? All right. What's that? How you doing? All right. You just have to be. Well, let's see. How old?
The stand. I didn't do it. Big trip. My wife did it. Let's go take her out. I was talking about Beanie and the kids. Hello, young lady.
it done. Don't wait too long, otherwise you'll have to wait the next year. So let's take our favorite gospel song, look to number 16, 1-6. I'm standing on the solid rock. We'll do all three verses. Through my disappointment, strife and discontentment, I cast my every care on the Lord. No matter what obsession, pain or depression, I'm standing on the solid rock. I'm standing on the rocky, on the rock. 67. Number 67. Never say goodbye. We'll do the first and the last verse. Purchase of God.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the North Carthage Baptist Church this morning. Before I start with my announcements, I have 3 different cards this morning. It says, Happy Holidays. I want to thank the church for the Christmas fruit basket and all of your powerful prayers. Have a happy new year. God bless all of you. Ruth Green. It says, Star of Wonder. Dear church family, wishing you the blessings of peace, love, and joy at Christmas. Wayne and I want to thank you for the many cards we get from you telling Wayne you are praying for him. It is very uplifting when you know that our brethren is praying on our behalf. May the Lord continue to bless the ministry of North Carthage, and may we always praise him for his goodness. Merry Christmas and blessings to all, Wayne and Merle Kim.
Amen.
And then Silent Night, Holy Night, wishing you the blessings of peace, love, and joy this Christmas. Love, Miss Barbara McDonald. It says, to all my church friends at North Carthage, another year has gone by. Your children are growing up. You are growing older. I had most of you in Sunday school class for several years. I saw a lot of you get saved. I missed that. There are no services like that where I am. I think about going to church with Kathy, singing in the choir, and it gives me an empty feeling inside. It will never be the same. The songs are not the same. The preaching is not the same. The service is not the same. And the spirit is not the same. And so I try most Sundays to catch North Carthage's service, and sometimes I do. Those are the good times. I have my songbook and I sing with you. I am working full time now, so on Sundays I'm not able to drive across the mountain. It seems further and further every time I come. And now I am coming only to say goodbye to friends I have loved for so long. Joe Beasley, Robbie, Paul, and lastly Philip. I got to come when you had Brother Gentry's farewell service. We were there with Brother Gentry many of the years that he served. If we had to leave for Bill to go to another church, Brother Gentry always welcomed us back when it was time for us to come back. You all welcomed us back. I miss you all and I love you all. This is my Christmas cards to my friends at North Carthage. Know that I love you, and maybe we will see you again someday, Miss Barbara McDonald. Our announcements today, this is the 5th Sunday, so after a regular offering, we will have another offering for the building fund. Bible study, we will start Bible study back Wednesday night at 6:30. Brother Sheely will be teaching, and everyone is invited. Our soldier basket is in the back. Let's please remember that. Birthdays, we have 3 birthdays in connection with the church. Miss Donna Wilson, Miss Glenda Gentry, Miss Puddin, and Brother Matt Watts. Happy birthday to all 3. Are there any others that I missed?
Ray Wilburn, my son, will be 55 years old tomorrow.
Happy birthday to Brother Jay. Any others? And we have 1 anniversary in connection with the church, Brother Jimmy and Miss Lois Hammond. Are there any other anniversaries? Okay, we had 2 deaths in connection this week. Miss Debbie Fulton and Wayne Hensley both passed away, and their services were last week. Our prayer request list, Miss Mary Ruth Bowles, Miss Ruth Green, Miss Oline Harwell, Mr. Wayne Kemp, Mr. Don Langford, Mr. Patsy Enoch and wife, Brother Ricky Rankin, and he's been on our prayer request list for a while. I saw Spud Wednesday, and he said that he was a little better. If he could just learn how to eat, he thinks he will be much better. Miss Lois Hamlet, Alan Carver, Alan Shoulders, Christine Woodard, Rita Stevens, Nathan Crow, Dennis and Tyler Costins, Bruce Angel, Mr. Jacob Brown, Mr. Bobby Sanders, Mr. Larry Bogle, Mr. Chad Smith, Mr. Jim Wilburn, Mr. Roger Shoulders, Miss June Angel, Miss Juanita England, Miss Reba McCall. Zealand is here this morning, but he's been a little under the weather, and when he's under the weather, Mama and the others suffer. So let's remember Jacinta and her family also. Bryson Grissom and Brother Bobby Albritton and Brother Gentry. Let's remember those that are traveling over the holidays. Let's remember our soldiers, our country. Let's remember the lost, and let's remember Brother Anthony as he stands to preach for us. Is there anything or anybody else that we need to put on the prayer request list this morning?
Chuck, I received a phone call almost on our last door. It's from our neighbor across the street, it's Mr. Joe Morgan, and his daughter passed away suddenly yesterday. She's in like her early 50s, I think, and they asked the church to remember them in prayer. And also the neighbor next to us, Mr. Marty Harris, is going to have hip replacement in a couple of weeks as well.
Let's remember Brother Marty Harris and
It's a
then the,
blessing when somebody calls you and wants the church to pray for them. I got such a blessing out of just being asked, you know, that they thought enough of me personally and also our church, you know, for us to pray for them.
Amen.
amen. It's very, very humbling that our church is thought of in a light that a lot of people ask us, even though they don't attend here, to lift them up in prayer. Anything else this morning?
Good. My nephew, Peyton Mullen, he got saved like Christmas night.
Amen.
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 That good news for sure.
Amen.
It's a special day for him now,
Yeah.
all the way around. Anything else this morning? If not, I'm gonna ask Brother Richard, will you lead us in a word of prayer?
Our most precious and almost Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this time of the year when we can reflect on what's happened in 2018 and hope what will happen in 2019. We are so glad to hear that once again you're still saving people that call upon you.
Amen.
Dear God, we're so glad that 60-something years ago you were saving people that call upon your name. And that you give us a sweet peace inside that can never A, be taken away, Lord, and can always, even though it's very dim, the light can be excited, Lord, by hearing the testimonies and coming to church. We thank Thee, God, for blessing our church. We still need help down here, Lord. We pray that your gospel, the way it's preached, and what you meant it to be will still be here in this area years from now. We see people going away and accepting other religions, Lord, but they ought to know better. But our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee that the candlestick is still lit here in our heart. God, we pray that you'll send us some help and that all the churches and Baptists and otherwise can quit fighting and come together and unify themselves, Lord, to carry the gospel to a world that doesn't believe. Thank Thee for what you have sent us, Lord, our piano player, our song leader, and most of all, our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for sending Brother Anthony and his family our way. Dear God, we want to remember all those that are sick. We want to remember all those, our dear Heavenly Father, that don't know Thee. Dear God, make us all bold so that we, every day in our lives, can tell people what we believe and not be ashamed. God, you're not ashamed of us, but we be ashamed of you. Dear God, be with our service today. Clean our minds out. Let us receive the message through thy servant. Help us, our dear Heavenly Father, the ones that can't understand why people die and get sick. Our dear Heavenly Father, you know best. Thank you for my salvation. I would ask you to be with my wife as she travels back home today. You're with us now. Let us have a good service, Lord. Let us be reassured that thy word is some shape or form. Maybe in a cave somewhere like our early ancestors, or maybe on top of a hill, and may not be very many, but still be, our dear Heavenly Father, preached by bold men. Forgive us of our sins, and what we have done not, our dear Heavenly Father, further thy cause. Go with us today, Lord. Help us. Lift Brother Anthony up, God, and his congregation.
Amen.
Our next song, 110, Heaven's Jubilee. Talk about Brother Richard was praying, looking forward to the new year. One thing that we can look forward when we're singing Heaven's Jubilee and having time, we'll just be there. That'd be like being in church all the time. That's a wonderful thought, you know, because I know here we keep up with time. We age, we get old, people die, babies are born. So what a wonderful thought. When we're in heaven, we just are. That's the time that will forever be. So everybody join in and sing Heaven's Jubilee. We'll sing all 3 verses. Some bright morning we shall see Jesus in the air, coming after you and me, joy is ours to share. What rejoicing there will be when the saints shall rise, ready for that jubilee yonder in the sky. Oh, what singing, oh, what shouting, shouting on that happy morning when we all shall rise. What glory, glory, hallelujah, glory, when we meet our blessed Savior here on Lord's side. Seems that now I almost see all the sainted there, rising for that jubilee that is just ahead. In the twinkling of an eye, change with them to thee. All the living saints to fly to that jubilee. What a day of singing, what shouting, shouting on that happy morning when we all shall rise. What a day of glory, glory, hallelujah, glory, when we meet our blessed Savior here on Lord's when with all that heavenly host we begin to sing, singing in the Holy Ghost, how the heavens will ring. Millions there will join the song, with them we shall be, praising Christ who ages long, heaven's jubilee. Oh, what singing, singing, oh, what shouting, shouting, on that happy morning when we all shall rise. What a day of glory, glory, hallelujah, glory, when we meet our blessed Savior here on Lord's side. We'll now have our regular church offering and then the building fund offering right after.
All right, I'm gonna do the offertory a little bit different today. I was in a dilemma. There was this song I really wanted to play, and you really don't know it. And the thing of it is, I found out if you don't know the words to a song, it's just a melody. There's no blessing to it. And so I'm not singing a special. I want you to hear the words to the offertory today. It's Jesus will be what makes heaven for me. I've heard of a land that is wondrously fair. They say its splendor is far beyond
our last song, let's look to number 162. 162. What meeting in the air? We'll do both verses. And I might want to share this, just a little prayer request thing. I've known Martin Phillips and Ann for several years. There is one little trivia fact. When he was a teenager, teaching singing school with his family, he dated Cheryl Cruz, who became united with Asian Americans from Mississippi. And I've always kidded Ann. I said, you give faith to women in the whole world, if they can take a photo away from girls in Miss America. But Marty teaches a lot of singing schools around, and I was talking to him, it's probably been a month or so ago, and I told him, I said, well, do you ever find yourself driving by Carthage on a Sunday morning going from one place to another? He said, well, yeah, there's times we are. I said, all right, brother, here's the invitation. You are invited to come to our church.
Amen.
So y'all put him on the prayer list. I know he's been here before for the Tennessee State singing, but I told him, Marty, I said, people at our church would love to have you and your family here some Sunday morning. Now, it may never happen, but you know what? You haven't got faith, you haven't got hope. So y'all just put that on the prayer list. It'll work out at maybe some Sunday, because he said when they're not at home in Crossett, Arkansas, no one's there to play the piano. Madison directs the music, and Ann teaches one of the Sunday school classes, and we know how dependent churches can be on people. But I said, God will work it out where he can be here one Sunday. We can worship him here at Harvard. So let's sing number 162. And
see everyone this morning. Good singing. And I hope each and every one of you had a wonderful Christmas. I want to also thank everyone from the church and everyone for the gifts you gave me and gave you. We truly appreciate it. Thank you very much, and we do love y'all very much. And I was thinking about the message last night, and I was thinking about, how swiftly time is and how swiftly this year has went, and it won't be just a couple of days, we'll be starting a new year. And don't know what new year next year holds for each and every one of us, but we know who holds the future, and that's the Lord. And we can trust and depend upon Him. And I hope we'll do that as we go into a new year. Brother Chuck's done welcome you. If you consider yourself a visitor, we're glad to have you today. I know we have one here. I think he's here for the first time back there in the back. We're glad to have him. And so I desire your prayers this morning, as always. But do pray for me as I try to do what the Lord would have me to do here. Our lesson reading will come out of the second chapter of 1 Peter. Second chapter of 1 Peter, beginning with verse 1 of chapter 2. It says, "Wherefore laying aside all malice and all guile and hypocrisy and envies and all evil speaking, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that you may grow thereby. If so be ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious, to whom coming as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chose of God and precious. Ye also, as lively stones, are built upon a spiritual house, and holy priesthood, and offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God by Jesus Christ." I want to stop right there. The 5th verse of my reading mistakes. Our thoughts will come out of the 5th verse. And it is this morning, it says, "Ye also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house." Building a spiritual house. We know you take pieces and you put them together. I'm no expert on that by no means. We have one here, Brother Kenny is. He can explain all we need to know. We're going to ask him about building something. Some kind of structure here in this world. But we're talking about a spiritual house. And it says this spiritual house are built up with lively stones. And I believe these lively stones that he is mentioning here are saved people. I want y'all to think about that as we go into the message. Everyone that is saved and a member of the Lord's church has a place. A place. And to be a lively stone is, we know when the Lord saves us, He puts something in us and He makes us alive. We come to life on the inside. When we're dead in our sins, we trust in Him. He saved us, we become alive. There was a fellow done some rock work for me and Debbie years ago, and I kind of got to know him a little bit. I knew of him, but I'd never been around him until he was laying rock. And we would talk, and he would pick up rocks and look at them, and he'd have his rock hammer, and he'd bust them. He said one day, he said, "Do you know that there's live rocks and there's dead rocks?" I said, "Well, I hadn't ever really thought about that." He said, "I can take a rock that's alive, I can chip it, and it'll break just where I want it, just where I want to put it, and it'll build just like I want it to. But I can take a dead one, and when I hit it with my hammer, it won't break right. Sometimes it'll fall to pieces, sometimes it'll break and run away, and most of the time those dead rocks, I just cast them aside. And I thought about that, and I say that to tell you this morning, us that are saved by God's marvelous grace, the Lord can take us and use us. He can chip away sometimes what He has to with us. I know He's worked on me throughout my life, and there's still more work to do. But He'll take us and use us and use us and build up a spiritual house. You might not know what your use is, but God does. He might not know what section of the house that you want to be, but He does. And He can take you and use you in something good. As I drove around, me and Debbie was in, I think it was, we stopped in Cookville last Saturday, we was coming through, and I got in the wrong lane, so we had to go around a different way, and they built up a bunch of new apartments here on this road, and this whole thing is just booming everywhere they are. Stuff going up everywhere, and that's good. Always better to see stuff building than not. But the Lord's house needs to be growing and being built. But for it to be built, it takes the Lord, the master builder. But it takes us, when He placed us, for us to do what He wants us to do. And that's what I want us to think about this morning, going in just a few days. It'll be 2019. I was thinking about 2019. I can remember, I was born in 1963, and, on a few years, I can remember the late 60s in my memory some, and the 70s and 80s, and all the way down. I can remember all those decades. And I think, 2019, it's going to be in the 20s, because good Lord, let time stay long. Where is it when? It goes by fast. But building a spiritual house. I'm going to go over here and read here. 3rd chapter of 1 Corinthians, Paul here, verse number 6 says, talking about him and Apollos, I have planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the increase. So then neither is he that planteth anything, neither is he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every one shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are laborers together with God. This spiritual house and the members of it are laborers with God. You think about that. And think about that when Brother Chuck mentioned this morning when he gives us something to do. He gives us something to do for a reason. You might think, well, he's the wise master builder. He knows everything. If I ask Brother Kenny today, when they out on a job somewhere and he's got some up there cutting rafters working them on top, they may be somebody on the ground cutting and telling them what they need to do. God tells us what to do. We have to execute that and do it. And if we do that, we're not going to build. Apollos and Paul here were watering, and God gave the increase. Verse 10 says, according to the grace of God, which is given unto me, as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth their own, but let every man take heed how he build their own, for other foundations can no man lay, that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. It all begins with Jesus Christ. When He took those 12 and took them up into the mountain and He ordained them, when He organized His church and He sent it forth. He had a local, visible church at that time to go out into the world and preach the gospel. And I believe we're part of that here today in North Carthage, still trying to proclaim the truth of God in His ways. Brother Richard mentioned in his prayers that people don't always stay with the way. They go off with something else. Take heed how you build their own. There's a lot of things in the world that looks godly. It might look religious, but it may go contrary to the doctrines of Jesus Christ and His church. And unless we take heed and understand how we build their own with the right kind of material in building a spiritual house. And I'm going to tell you today, and I heard a comment from somebody that I love dearly, and it troubled me. It was about the church and how things was, and he was talking about how dry. It was just troubling how wasn't nothing happening. And I thought about that. I thought about what I've heard Brother Gentry, and people say that Brother Gentry said, and I've heard Brother Gentry say it numerous times, when you come to church and you don't get anything. Well, maybe you didn't bring anything to get it in. I've heard him say that numerous times, and that always reminds me, the condition we come into the Lord's house, a lot of times matters whether we're going to get anything out of the service or not. Whether we're going to enjoy the singing, whether you're going to enjoy the prayer or the testimony or whatever it might be, or the message. It's what condition we come in. Being ready to be put to work, do what the Lord says, but take heed how you build their own. Us that have been saved. I could ask y'all, is there more than one way of salvation? I believe y'all say, no, there's not. It's through Jesus Christ. And trust in Him with all your heart. And through Him, that precious blood is the only way you can get saved. That is. You have to repent. Call on Him. I was listening to, flipping through the TV, and it was on some station in here, and I thought, well, I'm going to listen to this. And it went through a process as how you can, well, he didn't tell them that you're going to get them saved, pretty much. And that troubled me because, see, men are coming in and trying to do it on their own. We can point people to Jesus. We can tell people about what He's done. But unless He draws them to an altar of repentance somewhere, whether that might be anywhere, unless He does that, we can point them, we can preach to them, we can tell them, but when it comes down to it, it's between them and the Lord. Amen. Put man in between God and man. There's one mediator between God and man, and that's Christ Jesus. Amen. That's the only one. The only one. But take heed how you build their own. This world today is changing vastly. It's changing faster right now than it's ever changed in time. Now, the world thinks, well, we got to change with the times. You know, these new building methods. I'm sure I could ask Brother Kenny about those. They do things a little bit different than they used to, maybe when he first started. When we build in this spiritual house, the methods, the directions, the pattern has never changed. Amen. Not since the beginning. Never changed. And you know what, brothers and sisters? It's never going to change. Man will change it and he'll mess it up. But the truth will never change. The way, brothers and sisters, will never change. I'm thankful this morning, most of all, to be saved by His marvelous grace. That I got in trouble one day and He saved me. I'm thankful this morning that He led me to join the Baptist church. I believe that is His church, the true Baptist church. And I want you to understand something. The Baptist church cannot save you. It cannot. But and I'm going to tell you there's a difference. I refer myself sometimes, and some people might think, why you want to free? I refer myself as old-time Baptist, however you want to rephrase that. What do you mean by that? I mean by that it's 100% between God and you. See, like a mountain bench. It can't save you. What we believe. You can get saved and you can make you altar anywhere. Anywhere. You can get saved anywhere. Anywhere. Do you know what? There's going to be more people besides Baptists in heaven. I'm afraid there's some Baptists today don't believe that, but there is. There's some people of all denominations will be in heaven. There will be some that won't even have the name on the book. Never joined the church nowhere. Will be in heaven. But they all got there the same way. Somewhere down through time, God dealt with their heart and they called upon the Lord. Us building this spiritual house is most important. I spoke to that when I said that, it's trouble. It was just, kind of dead. Wasn't nothing going on, just dry, It's dry because God's people don't want it to be. They want it to be dry. God's not changed. The wise master builder's not changed. He's on the throne still today, making intercession for a lost and dying world. Wants people to come and get saved. We'll go over here to Luke for just a minute. Chapter 9. Jesus sent his 12 out. Verse 1, then he called his 12 disciples together and gave them power and authority over all devils and to cure diseases. I'm going to stop right there just a minute. And gave them power. You know what he gave his church today? He gave it power and authority to preach the truth. There's some today that have left the old way, started building another way, and I'm going to tell you what, just like he spoke in those 7 churches of Asia, when they wouldn't do it like they're supposed to do, he told them, you better be on your toes, I'll come in and take the candlestick out. And if you take a candlestick out, the Lord's not there no more. Take heed how you build thereon. But he gave them power and authority of all devils and to cure diseases. And that was the apostles there. We can't do that today. We can't cast out devils. We can't put our hands on and heal people like they did. But you know what? People, the Lord still heals today. He does. If it's his will, we can pray to the Lord and he can heal if it's his will.
Amen.
But it's up to the Lord. And it's up to us to make intercession. And he sent them to preach the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. And he said to them, take nothing for your journey, neither staves, nor scrip, neither bread, neither money, neither have 2 coats apiece. And whatsoever house ye enter into, there abide, and thence depart. And whosoever will not receive you, when you go out of that city, shake off the dust from your very feet, for their testimony is against them. Don't you worry about what you carry with you. You just go preach. I'll take care of you. I'll provide for you. And he'll go forth. And if you go somewhere and they won't hear you, leave and shake the dust off your feet. You told them. And they wouldn't receive you in. They didn't want to hear it. The world today doesn't want to hear the truth.
Amen.
But the truth is the only thing that will set them free. The truth is the only thing that can make you happy inside. This world today is trying to give mankind everything, the prince of this world, everything to satisfy. When we don't need one thing, and that's the Lord, to be satisfied. Back over to chapter 2 of 1 Peter. Verse 6 says, wherefore also is contained in the Scripture, behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and believe, he that believeth on him shall not be confounded. If you believe on him, you won't be confounded. When he saves your soul, you can know it. And you can tell people about it. And if you'll stay close to him, you won't be pulled away in some other kind of way. Unto therefore, which believe he is precious, and to them which be disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner. And a stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense, and to them which stumble at the word. Do you know there's people today, when you preach Jesus to them, they just can't go. It's just like something in the road. They can't get where they need to be. But to people that when he calls us and draws us to repentance somewhere, we seek him out, do whatever it is, giving up on ourselves till we find him precious to our soul. And we understand that is what it is. Verse number 9 says, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and a holy nation, a peculiar people. You might say, Brother Anthony, I really don't want to be peculiar. I'm going to tell y'all something. If we stand for what the Bible says, the world's going to think we're peculiar.
Amen.
There's something wrong with us. They ain't going to like us very much. If we love people, if we even love sinners, yes, we're supposed to love sinners. Not just their brothers and sisters here on Sunday. We're supposed to love sinners. If we love sinners the way we're supposed to love sinners, the world will think we're peculiar. When people rejoice and maybe shout in the Lord's house, to the world today, even the world, religious world, they think that's odd. What are they doing? Because they don't understand it. Sister Janet, I understood it last Sunday. There's been other times throughout my life when I've been in the Lord's house and His service, even as a little boy, and I've seen things that maybe to the world seem peculiar, but was not peculiar to me. And are not peculiar to me now. Testifying don't make you saved. Shouting don't make you saved. Some people that are saved may have never testified. Some people that are saved may have never shouted. That's not good. Being saved is peace with God.
Amen.
But I'm going to tell you, there was a time, and I can remember when I was a boy, thankful we still got some that the Lord let come out and only shout. But I can remember when it was a whole lot more prevalent, can't you?
Yes, sir.
Amen.
But well, we think, well, it's a little odd. Oh, it's not odd. I'm thankful that I know that there's a difference of having peace with God in my heart and what it is just to having a head knowledge of it.
Amen.
I got a heart knowledge of it. He done that for me. And when we'll build and work and labor and follow Him, we can build this and build on the foundation of Jesus and what He put His church out to do, and to go out to all the world and tell people about Him, and it might get built and grow. And you know how it grows? It grows when people get in trouble. When little lost boys and girls, when they reach the age of accountability, they get in trouble and they want to seek the Lord. They need to seek the Lord. They get lost. And when they get saved, they ain't lost no more.
Amen.
3 words that I really like. I like being lost. Because I had to get lost before I could ever get saved. I wasn't lost from my mom and daddy, but I was separated from God. And He let me know that. And when I trusted on Him and believed on Him, He reached down, put peace in my soul. In the majority of my adult life, I had a good section there. A few years I didn't go to church. Y'all heard all that. But I was His, and He didn't give up on me. He had a job for me to do. It's kind of like talks about the potter. when they're making them pots, you know, us being putty in the Master's hands, you know. That's how we are when we saved by His grace. And sometimes when we're saved, we'll run and run and run, and we won't let Him use us. And I could have kept running, and I could have kept, but I tell you what, brothers and sisters, I went as far as I could go. When Debbie would come in and find me laying in the bed in the middle of the evening, curled up like a little baby, in a terrible shape. When I'd go to my pastor and want for help, he couldn't help me. See, I want help from everybody, but who I know that I need to get it from. So on my knees down on the hill where I live, before we lived there, I promised him and promised him and promised him, but he knew I was lying. But I said, Lord, you take this off me, I'll do what you want. Immediately, that heart trouble I was having was gone. I know what I say. I know what I say during all that. But I didn't do what he wanted. I carried my family back to church. He blessed and blessed and blessed since then. I didn't want to preach. Brother Chuck mentioned this morning about us when we told our wives about a woman, the Lord called us to preach. But Chuck, you know, when I told her, I told everybody else, she didn't know nothing about it. For 2 years I run from him. He's building. I didn't know it. That's what He's going to do, use us. But we got to be willing to be used. And I'm going to tell you what. Every one of us that are saved, God's got a job for you. That job may be, if you're just saved, it may be you're not with His church. Then He'll put you to work what He wants you to do. And if you're a member of His church, He may have a job for you to do. Why is that so important? Because if we don't build like the Lord says, a spiritual house. You know, we can build a wooden house. This is a fine building. North Carthage has come to worship in every Sunday whenever we come together. It's a fine place. These walls, these pews, can't do nothing. They're dead. But us that are His are alive. And that's what it's all about. A chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of Him who hath called you out of darkness unto His marvelous light, which in times past were not a people, but now are people of God, which have not obtained mercy by obtaining mercy. Dearly beloved, I beseech ye from strangers and pilgrims abstain from filthy lust, and which war against the soul, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, wherein ye speak against you as evildoers, that you may do in good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it is the king or supreme, or unto governors, unto them that are spent by the punishment of evildoers, for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may do silence and ignorance of foolish men, and free and not using your liberty a coat of malice, but as the servants of God. Servants of God. That wise master builder. It's important that we continue. Over in the 6th chapter of Jeremiah, it talks about standing in the old way, standing in the old paths, that you'll find rest for your soul. The world today will come up with every new idea of Christianity or whatever it might be to entice people that they need to find the Lord. The method has never changed. The method of building has never changed. It's through repentance and faith in Jesus Christ. And through His holy power is the only way you'll ever get saved. He has to draw you to an altar of repentance somewhere. And He does not care where you've been. He just cares where you're going. I'm thankful that I serve a forgiving God. Because He saved a wretch like me. Whole wretched sinner. This flesh, I don't know about y'all, I still have to ask Him sometimes when I think things I ought not think. Say, Lord, forgive me for that. Or maybe I think and do something I ought not do. Forgive me for that. Why? Because this flesh is weak. But what He done on the inside is perfect. It's perfect. I hope and pray 2016 will be a blessed year for the church here at North Carthage. I pray that there may be lost here this morning that have never been saved. It's my prayer for 2019 that the Lord deal with your heart and you'll get saved. And you'll be able to stand and proclaim what the Lord has done for you. And I pray that us as a church will have one thing on our mind. Getting the gospel out while we have time and opportunity. I said things is changing. I've heard it my entire life. How things are going to be when He comes back. And how this world is going to get. We don't like to think about those things. But us that are saved and know what this book says can look at our world today and see directly exactly where she's headed. We can see. We might not want to admit it, but He's coming. You know, my whole entire life, I heard old preachers and I heard old ones talk. Say, well, there's going to come a time where there won't be no more money. You know, you go over in Revelation and talk about, you know, won't be able to buy or sell. Think about it. And you take what in it, every kind of interpretation you want, but we see what the book says and we see what's coming. You say, Brother Anthony, I don't like to think about that. I don't fear that because I'm going to tell you something. My life's almost over. I don't know how much longer I got. But I look at these children here. I see my grandson. I see that little baby back here in the back for the first time he's been here. I see the rest of these young ones here. Times are changing. What they may have to do if the Lord lets time stand will be unrecognizable to me if I was still living then. I'm looking for what's up yonder. And the only way y'all can find what's up yonder is to get saved. Us as a church, the only way we can do is point them to Jesus. Build a spiritual house. And understanding this world is going the way the Lord said. Destruction's coming. You can say, Brother Anthony, we start in 2019. We need to think about good things. I am talking about good things. You know what a good thing is? When you lay down and die and say, Lord, if I don't wake up, you got me. If I don't make it home, it'll be all right. Why? Because what He done for me on the end of the motor's bench 40-some years ago, and He's still good today. I want us to seriously consider, remember, all of us that know All of us that ain't forgot. You think you're looking back again, how things used to be. If we don't worship the Lord in spirit and in truth and continue and grow and move and stand and contend for the faith, that some of these little ones may never see what you and I saw. Brother Richard mentioned in his prayer about the gospel still being here, preached years down the road. It could not be if you and I don't earnestly contend for it. If we don't work and labor, pray, and I don't mean just praying here on Sunday morning. I'm talking about praying through the week. And we need His help. There's people here that's got lost people that I know of. I've thought about them. I'm still praying for them. And it seems like some of them got hold of them good enough for them to get saved. They need conviction. Us as the church need to be praying for conviction for these lost people. Why? One of these days we won't have no more opportunity to be. The trumpet will sound and time shall be no more. In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, I quit. Done. You know, I heard that my whole life, and I thought, well, I do that. And I become lost. And I realize there's something to that. And I know now the Lord's coming one day. And all the time, Jesus, what did He tell them? Be ye ready. Be ye ready. For you know not what hour the Son of Man comes. Brother Byron, Sister Matilda, if you're coming. I'm ready for that. Are you today? Let's take heed how we build. And if you're lost this morning here, the Lord's dealing with your heart, whether you will come up here and pray on this altar, or whether you will pray where you're at, you let us know and we'll pray with you as long as you want to pray. But it'll be between you and the Lord. You have to get saved. We'll congregate to stand.
Number 163, 163. Now I'm reaching to
Anyone have anything on the heart this morning?
We need to have a handshake. This last Sunday this year, we need to have a handshake, brother. I'm so proud of these people.
We sure will. Anybody else got anything on your heart before we have a handshake this morning?
Enjoyed that message, Brother Anthony. Like I say, when I first come here, it was simple. It shouted, we don't have much of that no more. I'm correcting this, and it's shout. Let's put Francis, Bill McDonald, every time he saw him, was meeting in there, just about his shout. I wish a lot more of these little ones could see that. It's good to be here.
I want to say I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was one more message.
Somebody else?
Brother Anthony, the Lord has truly blessed us. When you speak of the work to be done, today I count between 15 and 17 children in this church that's not reached the age of accountability. If that doesn't put conviction and a burden on our hearts, then we're failing what He's instructed us to do. He's working with us if we'll do our part. I want to praise the Lord for putting these children in our midst.
Amen. Somebody else?
I need to thank him for a mother that made me preach. Or in my days now, I want to coach. And all as soon as kids say, and my son, and my grandchildren. Praise His name.
Appreciate that. Somebody else?
Can we say 454 on our checking that? It's in the red.
Anything else? Can we help him?
I don't know about tomorrow.
thankful I know who holds my hand. Be anything else before we leave this morning?
It was good to be here today. I wish my brother had been here. He was not feeling well. And my husband's not feeling well. But they finished Christmas, which that's a good thing. I want to thank the Lord for saving me when I was 11 years old. Got prayer. I'm so thankful that Bruce got to come back home. We will be here 3 weeks. By the time we leave, we will not spend that much time together as a family in almost 9 years. And his sleep has been perfect. It's been great. There's not a better word that I can think of that I can even get to tell you about. But I know he misses the church. I know he misses everybody here. And I wish he would remember us in prayer that, of course, we don't want him to lose his job by any means, but maybe it's the Lord's will that something will come up that maybe we can move back closer. That Georgia will never be home. I don't even call that place home. That's the house, or that's the trailer, or whatever, but that is my home. And this is home. Here, when I got there,
Someone else?
Brother Anthony, hearing her say what she did, I can remember as a kid growing up, our family would go places to sing. We'd be at worship services and places, and just have a good service, have a good time in the Lord. And on the way back home, Daddy'd look at Mom and say, "Louise, mark this one down. This has been a good one." And as I've gotten older, I realized when you have those times with your family, even with your church family, mark it down like the Lord marked it. Because you don't always have those good times, but you can always have those good memories. That can be a source of strength for you when maybe things aren't going too well. I enjoyed your message today, brother.
Someone else? I'd like to wish all y'all a happy new year. I hope the Lord truly blesses all of you in your home. And I hope and pray and hope we'll all just be prayerful for all the prayers that we'd like to see done here at the church, the lost people. And we can have a great year in the Lord work too. Anything else before we dismiss? Remember our Bible study Wednesday night, 6:30? Anything else? I'm going to ask Brother Stein if he will dismiss.
Father, thank you for this